I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who's an Eastern Orthodox Christian the other day about identity and about the importance of identity in defining who we are, giving us purpose, giving us meaning, giving us a direction, recognition from others even in life. And so there is it's not an understatement to say that identity is perhaps the most important cultural conversation that's going on right now. Everything centers around identity. And one of the interesting things that we were talking about, and one of the interesting things that I've been kind of mulling around in my head since the conversation, is how important it is for the world, and I'm speaking of the world, the secular world, to find an identity in exterior things like gender, sexuality. These are kind of the big ticket identity issues of the day. But then in addition to that, we as Christians have the tendency to sometimes go, oh, wow, yeah, look at these secularists. They're all, man, they need to have their identity in the right place. They need to have their identity rooted in God. And we have the tendency to say this as though we're immune to putting our identity elsewhere. And yet all it takes is a very quick look at social media. You go to somebody's bio and you can read. They've got their little identity markers within their bio. I made a post the other day about how patriarchal, Christian nationalist, post-millennialist are the evangelical pronouns. And I said this kind of tongue-in-cheek. Some of those things I find to be attractive theologies, others not so much, but that's beside the point. The point is that there are a lot of people who use these labels not simply as a way to help people understand their theological persuasion, but as a way to define who they are. And they speak as people who are these things. I am a patriarchal man. I am a post-millennial Christian. I am Roman Catholic. I am Eastern Orthodox. And we have the tendency to use these words and stretch them simply from being designations of where we are situated in life to core identity markers. And this is where that Christian kind of tribalism comes from that terrifies me, that I just don't like. I think it's a very unhealthy pattern. You see this happening in a lot of Roman Catholic traditionalist circles. You see this happening in kind of the J. Dyer, Father Peter Here's circles within Orthodoxy. You see this happening within Protestantism, where you have certain Protestant groups that are kind of puffing themselves up as being superior to others. I especially see this in the Reformed camp. No offense to my Reformed brothers, but I think it's most prevalent there. And you see these people really marrying themselves to these labels as their core identity markers. And my concern with this is basically what I said. It becomes the pronouns of the evangelical world. And so we look down with kind of this condescension upon those who have he, her, he, or he, I can't even say them, he, him, she, her, they, them, ziz, zer in their bio. And we're like, how stupid is that? All I need to do is look at a freaking picture of you and I can tell what you are. I don't need your pronouns in the bio. Man, these people are outrageous. And then in the same breath, we have our pronouns in our bios in order to define who we are so that we can stand out, so that people know who we are. And so this video is of a pastoral nature, and it's simply to ask the question, where is our identity truly? Is our identity in the particular denomination that we belong to? Is our identity into the particular theological persuasions that we belong to, like Calvinist or Arminian or Thomist? Is our identity rooted in the group of people that we call our circle of friends that think like us, that speak like us, that share the same views that we do? Or is our identity truly rooted in Jesus Christ? Because brothers and sisters, everything is downstream from that. Everything is downstream from that, or at least it should be when it's put in its proper place. And so guess what? It's not wrong to say I'm a Calvinist. It's not wrong to say I'm a post-millennial patriarchal Christian nationalist. None of those things are wrong in and of themselves if they are oriented properly underneath the absolute identity marker. But my fear is that too often we forget that absolute identity marker. We find our identity in these things so that when other people attack these things, we feel personally attacked. And I've noticed this especially within the Christian nationalism debate going on online right now. There's a lot of controversy surrounding it. And there's a lot of people that I think are putting their identity in Christian nationalism and understanding their relationship to God through that lens, as opposed to understanding Christian nationalism through the lens of God as the absolute supreme being, whom all of their identity is in and through which everything else flows. And so this video doesn't need to be overblown or made longer than it needs to be. But I do think it's very important that since our culture is facing such a profound identity crisis, that we actually talk about identity within Christianity properly too. It's so easy to become blinded to the plank in our eye, to see the speck in our brothers and sisters' eye, or our non-brothers and sisters out in the world who have the pronouns in their bio, and to say, oh, those silly people. Man, if only they knew what it was like to have their identity rooted in Christ. Well, we, at the same time, have our identities in other things, other than Christ. Christianity is not a tribalistic religion. It's a religion where there is no tongue, tribe, people, nation, or tongue distinct from one another. It is a place where all people from all walks of life come into the gates of the New Jerusalem. And yes, there's a uniformity there. Of course there is. But that uniformity, that unity, that liturgical unity that is supposed to be taking place in the church is ultimately rooted in understanding what God demands of us and responding to him as he has commanded us. We are not defining ourselves. And all too often, churches and Christians are trying to define themselves. We are this church and we do things this way. We've got cool fog machines and lights. Or we are this church, we do things this way. We only put the Eucharist in your mouth. We wouldn't dare put it in your filthy hands. And we have these little categories and these things that we do to make sure that people know who we are. But unfortunately, when we do that, we have the tendency very quickly, very easily, to start viewing God through the lens of our own identities that we've come up with through our own expressions, through our own worldview, through our own reaction to things that we don't like, or overreaction at times. And so I just want to challenge us. We need to be aware of these pitfalls for Christians. We need to be aware of how to avoid them, and we need to truly root our identity in the right place, which is Jesus Christ, in order that these other labels, these other things that are helpful, will fall in their proper place and not be the very things that define us. I'm not an Anglo-Catholic first. I'm a Christian first. I am not a Thomist first. I am a Christian first. I'm not even a husband first. I'm a Christian first. May Christ be all, so that all the other things in life can be in their proper place. And only when that happens will we begin to have more productive dialogues with each other without being so defensive all the time. And only then will we be able to actually meaningfully address the crisis of identity that's going out in the secular world. But if the church doesn't know who she is, then how are we going to tell other people what they are? Let us start with Christ and work our way down from there.